So we have finished all of the ornithischian bird-hipped dinosaurs. And now it's time to look at the other side of the dinosaur world, the Saurischia. You might want to refresh your memory on what that hip structure looks like. That was an early lecture that we went over. And this group has two very, very different groups. It contains the giants of the dinosaur world, the so-called sauropodomorphs or sauropods, and then the classic carnivorous theropods, the ferocious dinosaurs that make all the movies and such. Here's the cladogram, of course. We just spent the past few lectures looking at the right side, so the ornithischians. Remember all of those: ankylosaurs, stegosaurs, ceratopsians, pachycephalosaurs, and ornithopods. Now we're going to look at this branch of the cladogram, the Saurischia. They are united by having the Saurischian type hip here, and this contains the two groups, the theropods, which we'll cover last, and then the group now that includes these two different groups here, but we're going to call this group collectively the Sauropodomorpha. So the Sauropodomorpha, just expanding that part of the cladogram from the other slide, contains two groups, the prosauropods and then the sauropods proper. Well, let's look at the prosauropods first. They're an interesting group, and probably the most interesting fact about them is how early they arrive on the scene. So now they are among the very first dinosaurs that exist on planet Earth, and they come along in the late Triassic. They thrive, they last into the early Jurassic, and they're gone. They are supposedly, although it's not definitive, the ancestors to all of the other later sauropods. And they're unique for a whole bunch of other things. They have a rather solid dentary bone, not so important, but look at the teeth. They have another type of tooth that is taken to be indicative of an herbivorous or plant-eating lifestyle. It's called a spatulate tooth. So it's flat like a spatula, but then serrated, so has these sort of bumpy, sharpy edges like a steak knife. So it's kind of still taken to be an herbivorous tooth type, and it's very much like the modern iguana. They also have some interesting hand features. The digit number 1 has an enlarged claw. Again, presumably these claws were used for attack. In the case of a large herbivorous dinosaur, probably instead used for defense. They had very, very long neck and tails, so this is a feature that we're going to see again and again in these other later sauropods. And then they have huge, massive hind legs, more so than their front legs. Interesting. If we look at them, look at the length of the hind leg. It's very, very long relative to the front leg. And everything that we've said so far is that you'd look at this, you'd say, well, this is a bipedal organism, an organism that walks around on its hind legs. But we do find them with footprints, and in fact, they were walking on all fours. It's kind of a curious thing. So it's weird that they would walk on all fours, have their face lower and planted here, but then still have the long neck. They have an inset cheek teeth row. We've seen that is a feature of herbivorous dinosaurs. Makes a big cheek pouch with room to stuff a lot of chow in there. And then it has the jaw hinge again below the lower tooth row, which we saw in some of the early ornithopods. They don't last, they disappear. They're an interesting group, but they disappear, and it doesn't coincide with any kind of other mass extinction event or any other large group disappearing. The thought is that they went extinct because of the evolution of superior herbivores. Because the same time that these things dramatically decline and disappear, that's when we start getting these other things that we talked about, the stegosaurs, ankylosaurs, and then, of course, maybe their descendants, the other sauropods, expanding. Interesting group. So again, here's sort of a mixed slide with both bones and reconstruction. There's the large head. There's the tooth row. There's one of these spatulate serrated teeth, and here's an artist representation of this. And I like this one because it does follow the actual tracks. You can see the much longer, much larger hind limbs, but a walking on all fours with, I guess, this gangly long neck sticking up in the air this way. So the Prosauropods, an interesting group. They had their heyday, but then they disappeared only to be replaced by much superior competitors.